Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, Slack. It's a bumper year for San Francisco's tech IPOs. But in a city that's home to some of America's richest and poorest, there are questions over how far the big tech billions will spread.
San Francisco is the exemplar of inequality.
Most of the money we make goes to our living expenses and our work expenses.
There's a housing crisis. People can't afford to live here. The people who would normally shop here have moved out of the area.
We're seeing 2 bedrooms start at 1.6 million and some of them going up to over 3 million.
Between them, the latest crop of IPOs could generate $230 billion of wealth, creating as many as 6,000 new millionaires in the process. One way that money could benefit San Francisco is in real estate. The property market in some neighborhoods is already going into overdrive.
We're seeing it be really competitive even right now. People are just trying to get in before the IPO money. They're convinced that the IPOs are going to drive up the prices, but
there's an urgency.
There's an urgency. We're seeing 5-10 offers on most single-family houses, really depending on the neighborhood, but we are seeing things on average still sell $100,000-$200,000 over list price.
For those living and working in these areas, the benefits of tech money are plain to see.
You can go up a couple blocks and you can actually walk to almost every single tech company that's going IPO this year. And now you've got everything right here. You have a grocery store, you've got bars down that direction, restaurants all up and down the street. There's cafes, dry cleaners, some of the parks are getting facelifts. So I think overall it's a positive impact on the feel of the neighborhood.
Other parts of the city are struggling though. And here, the latest round of IPOs could ultimately do more harm than good.
Here we are again. Huckleberry Bikes has been on Market Street since we opened in 2011. It was an area where on a daily basis there were just thousands of cyclists riding by. So we thought it would be a good location for that kind of bike shop.
It was also just a more affordable neighborhood than many other neighborhoods in the city. This community just simply had different people living here when we moved here. It had primarily artists, musicians who could afford to live in spaces like these where they lived and worked in the same unit, and they don't live here anymore. They can't afford to live here anymore.
Well, the ironic thing is that gentrification hasn't really been good for business. It hasn't really helped us grow. We did better in our early years before the tech companies really fully moved in. But they're not like encouraging their employees to come shop here or to spend money in the local economy.
Next door to us, there used to be, what do you call it, a topless, venue, if you will, a gentleman's club called the Market Street Cinema. It was here for many years. Our business was better when Market Street Cinema was open than when there was a condo building with a vacant retail space that's been vacant for, I don't know, a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
Jonas and Brian were once held up as poster boys for regeneration in mid-market, an area home to Twitter, Uber, and many more of big tech's big names. Many moved in thanks to tax breaks offered by City Hall 8 years ago. Now, local government wants to change that policy with a proposal by City Supervisor Gordon Marr to raise payroll taxes. So can you tell us about the proposal and why the city needs it?
I'm really commend all the companies and their executives and employees for their success. But there's been a downside to this tech boom that's played out over the last decade in our city, and that's the housing affordability crisis, gridlock on our streets, and the growing homelessness crisis in our city, where tens of thousands of our community members live unsheltered on the streets, largely due to the growing inequality in our city.
So what do you say to critics who might say that the tax might not raise very much funds, or that it might deter tech companies from coming?
It's a very modest amount of tax, 1.5% on billions of dollars of wealth that's going to be flowing into these companies, and this is a tax that they would have already had to pay prior to 2012.
If it's voted in November, Supervisor Marr's payroll tax reform could add hundreds of millions of dollars annually to an existing $500 million affordable housing fund. For the thousands of homeless people sleeping rough on San Francisco's streets, the money couldn't come soon enough.
We own 3 different residential hotel buildings. The Ambassador are the 2 brick ones. Then the West next to the Ambassador, and then the Adult, where you can see the sign for the Adult. They constitute nearly 500 residential hotel units. All of them occupied by people earning under $1,000 a month, so a very, very low-income population.
Don Falk is Chief Executive Officer of TNDC, a non-profit organization dedicated to providing social housing for some of San Francisco's poorest residents.
Here we have very, very low-income people, and at the same time, like right across the street, we're seeing a luxury hotel and high-end condominiums being built, leaving those who are marginalized with fewer options. Now we see the $5 cup of coffee, and what Tenderloin resident can afford $5
Right,
for
the
a cup of
long-time
coffee?
residents who've been
Yes,
here.
yes.
As Don sees it, TNDC's job is to keep their housing units affordable for the long term, even as rents go up all around them.
The kind of thing that TNDC and many of our sister agencies is doing, it is not only building affordable housing, but putting the ownership of the land into the hands of nonprofits so that the properties here will serve low-income people in perpetuity.
But housing is only part of the problem. As wages for the city's top earners soar, so too has the cost of living here. Low-income workers are struggling to cope. Uber drivers have been among the most vocal.
Drivers, thank you for being here. We can't do this.
When Uber started, they actually used to take 5% from drivers. Then after a while, they increased that to 10%, then 15%, then 20%. When I started driving, we used to make around $2,000 by working for like 30 to 40 hours a week, and that's before expenses. But to make the same amount of money and even less, we have to work between 70 to 80 hours a week and even more. We barely have enough money for ourselves. We're the one who actually build and help the company become what it is right now. And the company has always been trying to do everything they can to avoid taking responsibility for drivers.
Tech IPOs will bring hundreds of billions of dollars to San Francisco this year alone. But that money stands to widen the city's wealth gap at a time when many residents are already feeling left behind.
If they're not gonna take responsibility for the workers that they work for their company, we will force them by the law.
One of my teammates just got a studio into contract for about $1 million. Their company hasn't gone IPO, but they chose to get in early to kind of avoid maybe a bidding war later.
We're in an unprecedented situation where we have the median rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in San Francisco is now $3,500 a month, which is among the highest in the country or even the world.
Everybody, it shouldn't be such a special thing. Everybody ought to be able to live in this kind of a place.
There's a lot of challenges in this neighborhood that are encouraging us to look elsewhere. Time will tell, but I would say right now we're leaning towards moving on.